All right. First things first, what is your name and rank while you were in service?
Okay, my name is Brian Malloy. Rank while I was in the service. I started as an E1 back in 1980, and by the time I retired in 2004, I was an E8 Senior Master Sergeant in the U.S. Air Force.
What was your MOS as well as your unit?
Okay, so the Air Force doesn't use MOSs, they use AFSCs, Air Force Specialty Codes. And I was an aircraft maintenance specialist, so it shared a couple of different AFSCs. First, I was a 431X1, then it changed to a 452X3 Alpha.
What made you enlist into the United States Air Force?
So when I was going through high school, I did half a day of high school and half a day of tech school or a trade school. And I went to the aircraft and power plant mechanics school for that program. So when I graduated high school, I was a certified A&P mechanic. And at the time, the job market wasn't all that great for those that had just graduated from a school. They were looking for people with experience. And the only place that could get experience was Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines. So I picked the best one, the Air Force.
How long did you serve in the Air Force?
23 years and 10 months and 28 days.
In that time period, did you see any combat at all?
Did I see combat? Not firsthand, because in the United States Air Force as an aircraft mechanic, you would go with your aircraft, and the objective there was provide combat-ready aircraft for the pilots to take into combat. So, although I did get pretty close to the combat zones, I never had to go in them because the aircraft would fly in those areas and then they would fly out. Because it's kind of hard to maintain airplanes in the adversary's land, if you know what I mean.
While in service, what conflicts, such as Operation Desert Storm or other operations, did you potentially take part in?
So, the very first one was Operation Desert Shield, which was prior to Desert Storm. The outfit that I was assigned to, which was the 335th Fighter Squadron, we had the brand new Air Force F-15E models. Those aircraft had yet to have been certified for combat action because we had just received them. Part of my job was to advance the certification process to get those airplanes considered combat ready under the Air Force guidelines for what a combat unit rating would be. So we worked diligently to get those aircraft up onto combat status. Once that was accomplished, then the aircraft, we had to get them ready and deploy them. And it was going to be one of my jobs to go over to what we do our base X. And I was one of the folks that, one of the airmen that had the base plans for our base X's all around the world. So I would take the satellite data, which had to map out where all our equipment, our vehicles, and our tents and equipment were located in the deserts, and then to go dig them up and then create the bases, the base X at wherever we were going. However, due to it being a brand new unit, I was actually pulled off the airplane right before it departed and was told we were to expect 30 to 40% casualty losses the first week. So they didn't need me to stay behind to train up the new folks that were going to have to be forced replenishment for when we started sustaining those losses. That was Operation Desert Shield. Our aircraft deployed. between Desert Shield and Desert Storm. There were several months, so we got a whole nother unit up to speed on getting their combat rating. So before Desert Storm, approximately about 2 weeks before, we sent our second unit over there, and they were fully trained up and ready to go. But at that point, the unit that we sent there first, they had to remobilize from where we originally had them up to Saudi Arabia, where the second unit had already gone up, and then they joined up together to do Desert Storm a few weeks later. And I was constantly on a daily basis in contact with our combat forces overseas, providing them with the guidance to make sure the missions were successful. I can't really go into much more than that, but that was kind of my function. Being that I did have to stay back and keep the units trained up and get them spun up, because we had a third unit that we were spinning up just in case they had to go over. But it ended before that, so that wasn't that big of an issue. Then after that, I did do 2 Operation Northern Watch tours, and the first tour was pretty uneventful, but the whole concept there was to patrol the skies in northern Iraq to make sure that Saddam Hussein wasn't killing his own people, which is what he was doing. He was driving the Kurds north, and as he was driving them north, they were pulling them together and they were just massacring them. So part of our job was just put a stop to that. And like I said, the first tour, most of the stuff that we did prevent him from doing that. And the second tour, when we went back, Saddam Hussein was still there. He was still causing trouble. He was getting a little bit more into firing his rockets and missiles and at us. So we were successful in taking out several of his command and control complexes, a couple of his missile silos. Some of them were mobile, some of them were in place. But we did put a stop to a lot of the threats that he was doing to us. Also, while I was over there, I did Operation Allied Force, OAF, and that was to stop the government from basically genocide on the Muslims, is what they were doing. So we were patrolling the skies, we were taking out facilities that they were using, and that was Operation Allied Force. And that's about it.
All right. Did you ever have to make a tough call?
Did I ever have to make a tough call? Several. Can't really discuss some of them. So what kind of tough call would you be looking for?
Just any call that you could potentially talk about.
So sometimes aircraft would go down in places that were not so nice, and you have to send people for them. Not knowing what was going to happen to them. So the first time I had to make that call, I chose to go put myself on the list, and I went with the group. But I did have to select the ones that were going to go, knowing we had no protection, because we were in a host country, but that aircraft was pretty close to the border of the other country that we were flying against. And there were a lot of saboteurs, there were a lot of bad things happening in that area. But you got to do what you got to do. And so the tough call was, who was I bringing with me? and you just got to put your team together and do the right thing. Fortunately, it worked out.
That's good to hear. Now, when you retired after your 23 years, what became your job after service?
So initially, when I got out, I had myself set up where I didn't really have to work if I didn't want to. But after taking the first 2 weeks, I was pretty bored. So I went ahead and found a job. The job I was doing, which I went and became a certified life and health insurance agent. I thought I might like that, but I didn't. You know, I did miss working on the aircraft, although it was a little bit higher level job, money-wise or whatever. It wasn't fitting the bill for me. So I was offered a position as a contractor to come to the U.S. Air Force's depot center at Robins Air Force Base and help them with the depot maintenance on the F-15 aircraft, of which I had years and years of experience. So I took that position. We came, and for the first time ever, within about 8 months of me being here or being there, it's the first time they had ever sold all their aircraft on time in a year. It had never been done before, so I was pretty proud of that. And shortly after that, I was offered a position working in the maintenance training office, and pretty much that's where I am today. I'm a supervisor over the onboarding of the new employees that are coming out to us, which generates about 40 new employees every 2 weeks. And I'm also the chief over, we call it wage grade development. So all the mechanics, all the technicians, they're considered wage grade employees. I'm over there, all the wage grade employees training programs. And we have quite a few folks out there.
All right. And would you say you had any difficulty adjusting to civilian life after your service?
No, not really. Biggest thing is, I didn't really need to start on a job, so I didn't really worry that much about it. But the military, you used to working in the maintenance career field. You used to working a lot of hours, and it's full speed ahead the whole time. So when you're not doing that anymore and you slow down a bit, and you're like, no, I need to do something. So that was one of the biggest adjustments, is the fast pace that we had in the military. Noticed, and really had that in the civilian world. So I did kind of miss that, but that's about the only thing.
Now, what advice would you give to future enlistees?
My advice to future enlistees: 1, stay out of trouble. 2, work on your leadership skills. Not all leaders are your generals. There are leaders all the way up through the ranks. You can be an airman and be a leader. You can be a positive leader, you can be a negative leader. But there are leaders all along that spectrum. So my thing would be, always lead from positivity. Always lead to where we're going to make things better. There are negative leaders that make things worse and drive the unit morale down, drive what you're able to achieve down. Do you want to have success? Be a positive leader. And look for the ways to improve your leadership skills to help your organization get to that point.
Well, that is all I have to ask you, and I thank you for your time.
All right. Well, that was pretty quick.